That my phone buzzed at 7:12 a.m., vibrating itself forward on the counter like it was trying to leave. I didn't rush to it. The kettle was already screaming, the kitchen already smelled like toast, and Grandpa was already sitting at the table, folding the corner of a napkin into a triangle, and then unfolding it again. When I answered, I didn't say hello. "Grandpa died last night," my father said. His voice had that clipped, managerial tone he used when he wanted a sentence to feel like a closed door. "Funeral Friday. He left us everything. You get nothing." There was a pause, not for me, but for effect. Then my mother, somewhere behind him, laughed. Not a gasp or a slip, a satisfied sound. "Finally, you're out." I set the phone down between the salt shaker and Grandpa's mug and tapped the speaker icon. The screen lit up, anonymous and bright, like a witness light. Grandpa didn't react. He kept folding the napkin, slower now. His hands were thin but steady. He had dressed himself that morning, which meant he was having a good day. I didn't argue. That surprised me a little, but only a little. I'd learned early that arguing in my family was a kind of volunteer work. You brought your own energy, and they used it to build something you weren't invited into. On the phone, my father cleared his throat. "You still there?" "Yes," I said. One word, enough to keep the line open. He launched into logistics, funeral home. Time. Expectations. It was the same way he talked about holiday plans or hospital parking, like he was reciting information into a recorder that would later prove he had done his part. While he spoke, I watched Grandpa. The napkin lay flat now, abandoned. He was listening, but not leaning in. He had that look he got when someone underestimated him out of habit, not malice. My mother said, "Make sure they don't come. We don't need a scene." I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was familiar. The being discussed in the third person while fully present had been my childhood specialty. At 10, at 15, at 25, I had learned to sit very still while other people decided what I was allowed to be. Grandpa reached for his mug. His hand shook, just enough to notice. I slid it closer to him without looking. On the phone, my father said my name once, like punctuation. "You understand?" I understood perfectly. The story they were telling required my absence. My objection would complicate it. My silence made it clean. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, because they never asked, was that Grandpa had come to stay with me 3 weeks earlier. "Just for a bit," he'd said, already packing. He hadn't wanted an announcement. He'd wanted quiet. What they also didn't know was that yesterday afternoon, while my parents were very publicly not calling him, a lawyer had sat at this same kitchen table and slid a thick envelope across the wood. Grandpa hadn't opened it then either. He just nodded, like a man acknowledging a weather report. The envelope sat now between us, still sealed. Its weight was not symbolic. It was practical. Paper has mass. Decisions do too. My father was still talking. He had moved on to money, not specifics, just the idea of it. The way people do when they think it belongs to them by default. Grandpa finally looked at me. Not a question. A check. I didn't nod. I didn't shake my head. I did nothing at all. That was the moment I realized something had changed. I wasn't waiting to be dismissed. I was waiting on purpose. Grandpa leaned forward. The chair legs scraped softly against the tile. He didn't reach for the phone. He didn't clear his throat. He didn't rush. He spoke one word. Incorrect. The sound of it, his voice, unmistakable even through the speaker, cut the air cleanly. Not loud. Not angry. Certain. There was a silence so sudden it felt physical, like pressure dropping. Then my mother said. My father said, "Dad?" Grandpa didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. Authority doesn't explain itself unless challenged, and he had already decided not to be. "I'll have my attorney call you," he said, calmly. "You've been misinformed." He reached over and ended the call. The screen went dark. The kitchen returned to itself. The kettle had clicked off at some point. Toast popped up, forgotten and blackened at the edges. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then Grandpa exhaled. It wasn't relief. It was completion. "You didn't interrupt," he said. Not accusing, not praising. Observing. "I didn't know if I should," I said. He nodded. You always knew when to wait. That landed heavier than anything my parents had said. We sat there a while longer. He opened the envelope eventually, not with ceremony, just curiosity. I didn't read over his shoulder. I didn't need to. The external consequence had already happened. The control shift wasn't in the paperwork. It was in the call that ended the way it did. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed again. Missed call, voicemail. Another one. I didn't listen right away. Silence, I was learning, wasn't empty. It was a room. And for once, I decided who was allowed inside.